Hello, my name is Michael Talty. I'm the Executive Librarian in Local Studies and Archives. Last year we introduced this feature where we talk about some new collections that we've received into the archives and into the Local Studies Centre, and I'm going to continue that. My colleagues as well, Ciara Fahy, the County Archivist, and our new member of staff, the Senior Library Assistant, Carew, will also talk about collections which they've been working with, some of which we've recently had in and others which are related to these collections. So I'll get straight to it, and I'm going to start with a series of papers, or series of documents rather, that relate broadly to the Thomond estate. The Thomond estate being the estate of the Earls of Thomond, formerly the Kings of Thomond, formerly the descendants of Brian Carew, the main magnates in the area of Thomond and later of County Clare. Their estates evolve over time from Gaelic lordship to an English earldom, and eventually the ownership of the estate moves from the O'Brien family to the Wyndham family. And I'll go through this through several documents which we hold. One document which we received in a number of years ago, but which I think kind of will explain a lot of the ideas which I've just, or the points that I've just made, is this book here, which is a bound together document of numerous, I guess, legal materials relating to the Thomond estate, the estate of the Earls of Thomond. This material dates from about 1660s through to the 1720s, and you have a series of different kind of documents attached together. You've got deeds, settlements, you have various deeds of settlements from 1664 through to the 1680s. You have a will of Henry the Earl of Thomond made out in 1690, and then other different materials relating to acts which would have pertained to the Thomond estate, acts from the Irish Parliament, acts from the British Parliament, and material relating to grants, fees. There's all kinds of material in it. It's beautifully written, as you can see, and there's basically Henry Earl of Thomond's indenture there, and that's dating to the late kind of 17th century. The script right through, very, very easily readable. All of this material has been discussed at length in a very excellent article written by Martin Breen and published in Archivium Hibernicum, and which Martin has graciously allowed us to put the content of which on our website. And it's a very, very good read. It explains an awful lot about the estate through these documents, through that very interesting period when we move from, I guess, kind of pre-penal laws and the wars of the 18th century into the time of the ascendancy. The Thomond estate itself effectively died out. I guess the Thomond family, the Thomond kind of branch of the O'Brien family, died out in 1740, and that estate was inherited by an English family, the Wyndhams. Now the O'Briens themselves had moved into buying land in Carlow and buying land in England. That's in the 17th and 18th century book. But then their lands in England and the estate and so on were inherited by the Wyndham family, who themselves were based at Petworth House. And the Wyndhams variously became the Earls of Egremont and Lord Leconfield. And I'll kind of go through these changes through a couple of documents here. First document I'm going to talk about is one that we've received in recently, which is a book of documents pertaining to the Earl of Egremont, relating to about the year 1782 to about 1800. And what you have are a series of rents, a series of lists of tenants, and a series of bills and receipts and all kinds of interesting information. This has only just been received in recently, I would say actually the last month or so, so we yet have to transcribe and have to scan this material, but it's very, very interesting, and in particular interesting information relating to the town of Ennis at a time when there isn't that much, I guess, documentary evidence other than things like freeholders lists available for this period. So it's a very interesting document and bridges a time between when the Earls of Egremont have taken over that branch of the Wyndham family from the Thomans. At one point, one of the I guess the Egremont, the Wyndham family inherits. He's born effectively out of wedlock, so he's given a different title, Lord Leconfield, and he begins his I guess his tenure in the 1830s and 1840s, and takes a particular interest in the Thomond estates. His predecessor, George Wyndham, the Earl of Egremont, of which we have a print here, which has recently been donated in by Ciara and Carew. It's a lovely piece. This man wouldn't have taken as great an interest in his Irish estates, but the Lord Leconfield, who followed after him, certainly did. And there are several kind of Leconfields that kind of follow, basically from the 1830s to kind of the turn of the 20th century. And they're very, very interesting people. They build a lot of properties for tenants and so on. So in certain ways they're very progressive, and in other ways there's a lot of dissension between them and the tenants. But their rule, I guess, continues as landlords through to the 20th century. And relating to that, we have a 1908 rental of Lord Leconfield's estate. Now remember, this is effectively the Thomond estate, and it's all the lands thereof, and many thousands of acres, so a lot of central Clare and West Clare. And what you have here are very, very good lists of tenants and information and all kinds of details. And this is, by the way, donated as well by Ciara and Carew recently, and we thank him very much for that. This relates really to the end period of, I guess, what we'll call the Thomond, Wyndham, Leconfield, Egremont estate. It eventually, at the very end, devolves back to Earls of Egremont through inheritance by the time you get to the 1920s, and thereafter the estates are pretty much sold off to the tenants at that point, and the tenants become the owners. So what remains of O'Brien's, Inchiquins and so on move from being landlords to being landowners, and all of these people that are in these lists, really this is just at the period of time when that transfer of land moves over, so it's a very, very interesting document. So you can kind of see the history of the estate from the 17th century, when it has just moved into being an English style estate, to the end of that period at the beginning of Ireland's independence. Thank you very much.
Hi, so my name is Ciara Fahy. I'm a Clare County Archivist, and today I'm going to speak about two collections. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Port House Papers and the Forrester and Kelly family. So Port House was an 18th century house in Rouen, and it was about two families, the Forresters and Kellys. So the Forresters came to Ireland in the 1600s with Captain Francis Forrester, an army officer in King Charles I's army. And he stayed here after the 1600s and built up estates around Roscommon, Clare, Mayo and Galway. So his family then ended up marrying the Kelly family. So in 1860, Jeremiah Brew Kelly bought Port House in Rouen, and his daughter went on to marry Francis Forrester. So in this collection, it spans about 3 centuries, and we have a couple of items here that I'm going to show you. So the first one is Jeremiah Brew Kelly and Elizabeth Forrester and Francis Forrester and James Mullen. So it's their settlement of marriage from 1885. And it lists all the areas of land that they owned, the terms of the marriage, the inheritances and everything like that. So that's quite a good show of what they owned around the place. So they also have a load of ledgers and rental agreements, which also shows the areas of land that they owned, and they're great genealogical sources that show who were renting land in the area. So I won't go into too much detail about them, because you'll be shown a few of them later in Michael's talk as well. But you can see the amount of land they owned, the price, and again the purchasers and tenants. Some other interesting items in the collection are also firearms permits that were issued to Frank Forster Kelly in 1918 and 1923, and one of them is actually signed by General Michael Brennan as well, so that's an interesting one too. Another quite good item that we have here is a Commission of the Peace for Frank Forster from 1900, and it also comes with a seal, so there is some quite interesting things in it. The other collection we have is the Holohan collection. So John Holohan was an auctioneer, a valuer, a builder, a contractor, and he was also clerk of the Scariff Union and Workhouse. So because we have very little records for Scariff Workhouse, this collection is particularly important as it kind of adds to the stuff that we don't have. So one particular item we have here is a poster from the Scariff Union, which actually advertised the job that John Holohan himself went for as clerk of the union. So that's quite an interesting one. And we also have a lot of letters and correspondence from the workhouse and the union. So we have letters to and from the workhouse, and this particular item of the everyday dealings of the workhouse is from C.J. McHugh, who is a tea expert. So it's just saying how he is a tea expert for a lot of the poor law unions around the country. So that is quite a good one to add to our Scariff Union. There's also a lot of other letters from Ennis Union. Another place that we have no records for is Ballyvaughan Union. But for this, we actually have one tiny little scrap that says Ballyvaughan Union. All the Ballyvaughan Union records were actually destroyed. So as well as being clerk of the union, he was also an auctioneer. And when he was an auctioneer, we have a lot of these sale posters. So they're quite nice, and it says, sale of a business house in 1914, March 11th, 1914. So they say great information about where they were, how much land was sold, and things like that. The other duty he had was he did a lot of meadow surveys for people, and again, they're great genealogical sources that they say the tenants, the amounts owed. He did a lot of work with Colonel O'Callaghan Westrop, did a lot of meadow surveys for him as well. So in addition to his auctioneering business, he was a builder as well. So this is actually a list of paint samples and their colours from about 1900 from J and G Boyd in Limerick. So it's quite amazing that all of the paint samples seem to have survived. So he really had an awful lot of duties. In addition to his duties as workhouse clerk, Scariff Rural District Council clerk, builder, he often got a lot of letters from people abroad. So this letter is from Brooklyn over in New York of people looking for their genealogical research because he had so much information from the workhouse. So this is from John Connor in Brooklyn in December 1908 asking for information about the Connors family. So we have a lot of letters like that which are also a great genealogical source. And the last item I'm going to show you is his diaries. So we have many of his diaries. Some of them are a little bit in rough condition, but we've cleaned them up. And they list kind of personal information and also his work information. But in this particular diary from 1936, he has also a programme from 1936 of a Clare versus Cork senior hurling replay. And as well as the programme, he has an entry for the 12th of July saying that it was raining and talking about the match. So the diaries also give a great personal idea of his life and also a business idea of his life. So if you want to come in and look at any of the collections, just get on to us. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Ciara Carew and I'm the new Senior Library Assistant here at Valera Library in Ennis. I work between local studies and archives, and history is a great passion of mine. I have a master's in history. I also love folklore and mythology and anything to do with the culture of Ireland. So at the moment I'm working on a project related to Shannon Airport. So recently we were donated a collection from Shannon Airport called the McGrath-Egan collection, and I'm basically going through items in that collection and recording them, and we will be scanning materials hopefully and digitising them in the future. So I'm actually going to go through a few interesting pieces I found in the collection amongst like hundreds of press releases related to disasters that have happened at Shannon Airport, police, fire and rescue services, like incidents that may have happened relating to them. And there's many publications from Erinta dating from 1979 as far as 2004, and in them you learn a lot about the goings on among staff in the airport. So one part of the collection that I found most interesting, I came across first as well, are these badges. So these badges are actually fascinating. So the top two they're cap badges from the Irish Defence Forces. And on them you'll see a Fianna Fáil insignia and Uglug na hÉireann inscription. Now below we have uniform badges for Irish Airlines, and on them you'll see a harp and flying wings. And below that again is an Air Force cap badge with a laurel wreath. So very, very powerful looking little badges. Now another thing we have is a wallet belonging to airport police. A nice little retro looking wallet. And here we have luggage tags. So these luggage tags are commemorating the visit of Pope John Paul II on the 1st of October 1979 to Shannon Airport. So it's very interesting to know that people actually tie these onto their luggage to identify them. Now, another item we have is a box of matches. So this box of matches actually came from Air Force One. So on it reads, "Aboard the presidential aircraft." Now, so moving on, I might show you some of the bigger objects I found in the collection. So here we have a plaque in memory of Joe Sheridan. So Joe Sheridan is renowned as the inventor of Irish coffee. So Joe Sheridan worked at Foynes Flying Boat Base in the 1940s, and he also worked at Shannon Airport in the late 1940s, and it's said that he actually got his job by sending a letter to Brendan O'Regan, and the letter actually said, "Dear sir, I'm the man for the job, yours sincerely, Joe Sheridan." And Brendan O'Regan is said to have found this curious letter, so he invited him on board and he became chef. Now, what actually happened on the night was a flight took off from Foynes, the weather was too bad, and a Morse code message was sent back to base. And staff were informed that the plane was actually returning. Joe Sheridan was told to make something warm for the passengers, and of course he added a tipple of whiskey into the coffee, and from there on we have Irish coffee. I'm not even sure what the ingredients are, to be honest. Okay, so we're going to look into something else here. So I have a wonderful picture dating to the 11th of March 1948. So something very dramatic happened at Shannon Airport on this date. So on that night, a 74-foot tower went on fire. So after a half an hour, the whole tower actually collapsed onto an adjoining building, and telephone communication went down. So people on the scene had to, messengers actually had to travel 15 miles as far as Limerick to get help that night. So it's wonderful to have a photo like this in our collection. Now, another photo we have is a beautiful coloured photo. So this is by John Hind. John Hind was a very popular photographer around the 50s, 60s, 70s Ireland. And he was renowned for making postcards, coloured postcards. So postcards back then were commonly in black and white, but this guy comes along and enhances his photos with beautiful colour, and it gives this lovely, deep, nostalgic effect of looking into old Ireland. And here you'll see Shannon Free Airport and Industrial Estate, and there's something about the colour that he puts into the photos that really brings it to life. So there we have it. Now, another item I came across is related to a very tragic accident that happened at Shannon Airport on the 10th of September 1961. So many people have heard about this in the Shannon region, and what happened that night was the The President Airlines flight 90773 went down and crashed, and 83 people lost their lives. So this flight was actually travelling from Germany as far as Chicago, and it made a stopover at Shannon Airport. And on the stopover, there was one additional passenger added to the plane, and the crew actually made a changeover with the night shift crew. And so the plane took off and suddenly veered the wrong way to the left out across the Shannon estuary, and witnesses actually heard a huge thud. Some witnesses have said they heard a wrong sound coming from the plane, and this article describes the sound of rattling chains. So a very tragic incident on that night. Rescuers were quick on the scene, and it's also said that in order to reach the disaster zone, people actually came in and helped by placing bales of hay and creating a path out along the mud. So that's quite interesting there. That's that. Now, if you want to see articles related to that, we have the Clare Champion bound here from 1961. I came across a nice little article related to that particular crash. And we also have the Irish newspaper archives available for free here in the library. So you can look that up, you just enter a keyword. So for example, if I was looking up this crash, if I put in aeroplane crash Shannon and set the date, you'd come across several different articles from several different newspapers on that. There we have that. One more thing, we have a booklet here. So I found this little booklet very interesting. It's relating to the development of Shannon in the 1970s. It details the development of the town centre, schools and community facilities across Shannon. There's wonderful little pictures in it of Shannon Comprehensive School and housing being built. So let me see here now. There were these lovely white houses, and they're still standing today, built behind the flats in Shannon. So here you'll see a picture of what was going on in Drumgeely at the time, and you'll see the white houses here. It describes the early developments included 10 executive houses on Drumgeely Hill built for key personnel in the newly established industries at Shannon. So there we have it. I find little booklets like this are very useful in research and very complementary towards, for example, the Shannon Development Exhibition at the Glucksman Library in the University of Limerick, and various other collections. So very interesting items, and if you're to look through the collection, you'll come across things that might be very helpful in research. So here is just a list of important dates that happened in relation to Shannon Airport from 1936 as far as 1984. So fascinating little items I've discovered, and that's it. Thank you, looking forward to seeing you here.
I'll show you some documents from a collection which we've recently accessioned in. It's a very, very interesting collection, and actually the manner in which we acquired it is also very interesting. I got an email from a family in Limerick, and they found a box of materials in their attic, legal documents. I understand that their ancestor worked for a legal firm in Limerick City, and these legal documents pertain to the Valera estate. There's only 2 boxes of materials in it, but it's absolutely fascinating material, and it encompasses, I guess, all of the type of documentation that you would associate with an Anglo-Irish estate. It dates from about the 1770s up to the 1920s. So it's from the middle period of when this family were operating in Clare up till when they left Clare. The family themselves are the Vandeleers. The Vandeleers are prominent in Clare from the beginning of the 17th century until the 1920s. The first Vandeleer, Maximilian Vandeleer, received land from James I of Great Britain to come over from Holland to Clare. He took up residence in Clare probably around 1610 to 1615. He was, we think, resident until at least the 1620s, and then he drops off the record, and his sons then kind of come into their own as owners of the land. They themselves fled County Clare following the uprising of 1641, the Confederation of Kilkenny, the Cromwellian Wars, and then following the Cromwellian settlement, the family returned to Clare. Now, following their return to Clare, they settled again in the 6 Mile Bridge area, but also acquired land in and around Kilrush. This was the first of several estates that they were to own in County Clare, and they developed and grew their holdings through the 18th century until they were a very, very powerful family indeed, owning several thousand acres of land. The first document that I want to show you is the earliest document we found in this accession. It's an indenture. An indenture basically is an agreement on people holding land or people farming land. And if you can kind of look at this one here, this is a very typical indenture from the 18th century. It's dated to 1770. It's, as I say, typical in every regard. It's the Valera family essentially allowing another family to farm land that they own. This is in a situation where only a very small group of people own land, and as I say, they leased out land to everybody else. And these indentures are incredibly important because it's the basis on which you will sit on your land and you will basically farm your land and what kind of rights you have. And you get indentures in this collection right through from the 18th century and going right into the 20th century. Here's another example from 1798. And you can see at this time it's upside down, sorry. You can see at this time it's basically a much better kind of developed type of manuscript. We're kind of coming to the period post-union, and kind of legalities and everything become much more pronounced. You've got the official kind of stamp, government stamp. You've got like kind of several duties and things that have to be paid, and you've got the party of the first, the party of the fifth, and so on and so forth. So it's much more like the kind of legal documents that would be used to today. And indentures are a very important document in themselves. Probably the single most important type of document that we would have in a collection of this nature would be lists of tenants, because for genealogical and for other purposes, it's very, very hard to find lists of people because so much of our census material and other material has been destroyed, and also because, well, Catholics were discriminated against, and obviously you can't find kind of lists or information about Catholic families. So a list like this, which is a tenant rental list, which basically is a rental list of all of the tenants in the Kilrush area estate, and which you have a list of Catholics and Protestants, but mainly of Catholics, exactly what their holdings are, exactly what their situation is, and kind of how they're getting on in the year 1846 to 1847, which is right at the height of the famine. So there's a huge amount of information there. Also, in developing their land, they mapped areas, they surveyed areas, and they produced all kinds of internal documents themselves. And some of these are very interesting indeed. At one point in the late 19th century, the Valera family acquired a plot of land in North Clare. And this is a map of that land. Now, it's unusual in that it's a map that's been drawn effectively on a linen piece, like a handkerchief, but it's done to the 1/6 inch to the mile scale. You have several townlands in it. And if I could draw your attention to one townland here, what you can see here is basically the post Ordnance Survey 1838 townland, and an earlier townland that would have been a townland incorporated by the tides or in earlier times. It has now been, I suppose, subsumed into another townland, and this probably dates this probably to the 1840s, this map. And it's really, really interesting indeed, and there's a lot of information in it. As well as controlling their estates, they controlled the general life of an awful lot of the population. They were involved in the grand jury, which was the predecessor to the county council. So they have involvement in developing roads, bridges, social welfare, the poor law and workhouses and so on, and also education. And in the collection we have this memorandum here, which is part of an agreement to hire a teacher for the national school system for the primary school in Mayasta, which is quite close to Kilrush. And it's an agreement to get in a new headmaster, and it's countersigned by a lot of the kind of local officials, but also Valera himself seems to have an involvement. The Vandalers themselves continued to develop and to buy properties, and another property which they acquired was the Carew estate. A Carew estate is on the Fergus estuary, There's a little beautiful house there. There's soon going to be developed into a hotel. And it's a very, very interesting document. Again, lots and lots of information on tenants and so on. And you know, these tenants really are at the core of the estate themselves, and often, you know, you don't get information which pertains directly to them. But we do get information pertaining to them at the end of the life of the estate. And you can see here this document, this is a land commission document. So this is really kind of, I suppose, kind of heralding the sale of the site to the tenants themselves following the land war. By the time you get to the early 20th century, the tenants have enough clout, enough power politically and otherwise to be able to, I guess, issue a directive to the landlords themselves and say, you know, we intend to buy land, and here is the agreement on which we are going to buy land from the Valera estate, effectively buying out their own holdings. And finally, the last thing you kind of see is from the 1920s. It's a 25-inch to the mile map, and it's pretty good representation of the kind of holdings and land that were eventually going from the landlord to the tenants. The landlord would have owned this entire map, but by this stage he was only owned these kind of particular points in the map, and they're the last pieces effectively to be sold off. And it's a pretty good representation of the end of the life of the estate. So that's all I have to say about the Vandeleers, folks.